Am I the asshole for rejecting my husband's offer to join him for a family funeral after he explicitly uninvited me? I'll try to keep this brief. Husband, 28M, and I, 30F, have been together for a decade. Have a house together, no kids, we both work, we have a couple of dogs, the works. We met in college, I was local, he was from out of state. All of his family therefore lives out of state. When he graduated we stayed in my state, as he didn't want to move back to his home state. This past week his grandfather passed away. He was over 100 years old, so while the family has been bracing for his passing for a number of years, the actual passing was quite sudden and unexpected. I of course was there for him when he found out, helped him and his family in arranging Grandpa's funeral services, etc. They decided on an intimate viewing with burial right after. I respect that completely. I asked my husband how he's getting back home in such a short period of time. I offer to drive, we price check against bus tickets, train tickets, planes, etc. He says he'd like to go alone because he's concerned about finances, and besides, our dog takes daily medications and I'd need to stay home to manage this. I'd already let my bosses know I may need to take time off, and had already arranged with a neighbor to be on call for medicating our dog, but okay, I understand his point. We can't afford to both get tickets out, that's fine. Just let me know how I can support you, you know? The funeral is planned for Wednesday. He originally says he need to be there Tuesday, so he will work on flying out Monday. Then he decides he will just drive, and volunteers my car, not his, for this trip. I say that's fine, and since we no longer need to worry about buying tickets, does he want me to join him to support him after the funeral? He says no, that it should just be family, and ultimately he wants to be there 100% for his dad with no distractions. I'm a little hurt, but at the end of the day it's his family and his grief and it isn't about me. Then he decides that he should really leave Friday night. That way he has time to get there and spend some time with his family before the funeral and he won't have to miss work. He says he wants to work from home the Monday and Tuesday and he will only need to take off the Wednesday and he'll be driving home after, getting him home that night. Okay, seems fair. A little longer than I expected, but again his family, his job, not my say. Yesterday he calls me to let me know his family has decided to play hooky on Monday and have a big get-together, including his sister and her husband, and his brother and his wife and kids. He also informs me that he will probably stay through the week so as to not miss any work unnecessarily and will return home Sunday. At this point my feelings are incredibly sore. He's assured me for years that I am part of his family and that I'm not an outsider, even though I have felt that way often. He first disinvited me because of finances, then when finances were no longer the issue he said it was because it was an intimate family gathering, but his siblings-in-law are welcome? He's concerned about missing work and wants to stay even longer but is willing to be off his computer Monday without calling off to go to a big impromptu reunion? Then he has my car and leaves me with his busted van for twice as long as he originally was going to be gone. I let him know I was feeling hurt, and even though I knew it wasn't about me and it was a mournful event and I didn't hold things against him, I did feel very specifically excluded and like I wasn't part of his family. He said I was being selfish and I've been keeping my distance from him in terms of communication since. Today he texted me to ask when I wanted him home as his siblings were going to take some time off if he were allowed to stay longer so they could all catch up and go out and all that jazz. I told him to just come home when he wanted and to give me 24 hours notice so I could watch to make sure he got home safe. It's a 12-hour drive and we share our locations. I then turned off notifications as I was pretty heated. Now he's blowing up my phone saying they want to buy me a one-way ticket out to be with them. At this point I've already told my bosses I won't need the time off. I told my neighbor he won't be needed after all and he's already made plans for the week. I've made plans to see friends, work on the house, etc. I called him and said no, that I had been excluded from the start and I wasn't going to scramble to make plans to assuage whatever guilt he felt when he was called out. He said that it was a hard week and his grandfather just died, and that I was being an asshole for not giving him grace and understanding. I feel like I've given him nothing but grace and understanding from the start. So before I say anything I regret, Reddit, am I the asshole? This will not be brief, but it's probably not the bombshell plot twist everyone expected. TLDR, he's thoughtless but not malicious. So I took your advice and reached out to my father-in-law to share my condolences and express that I wished I could be there, but wanted to respect my husband's wishes that it be family only. And no, I was not passive-aggressive about it. I'm not trying to pit family against one another despite what some have implied. He called me immediately. He apologized on behalf of my husband and said he and the family were surprised that I hadn't come along, as when husband said he was driving they assumed any conflict of finances were no longer relevant and that I'd be joining him as I always do. I guess they tore husband a new one when he explained what happened and insisted he call and invite me, and that they'd pay for my ticket out there so I wouldn't have to drive the busted van. He said I am part of the family and should be involved. I sucked up my ego and took the offer, as I don't want this to hang over us for the rest of our marriage for one, and thoughtlessness or not, my husband deserves to be supported after seeing his grandfather. As I said in my previous post, I understand grief very well and know it can fog our normal sensibilities, and have been sympathetic to this throughout this whole affair. I asked my bosses if I could work from home, they said that was fine, and while my neighbor was unavailable I managed to convince my sister to stay at the house for a few days in exchange for childcare down the road. I flew out this morning and my husband picked me up, so we had a good while to speak privately before getting to his dad's. He says that he genuinely thought after the chaos of arranging the viewing and hearing how distraught his dad was that it was going to be a brief, solemn, intimate visit, and that nobody would be bringing their spouses along. He says it didn't even occur to him that just because the viewing was immediate family only, it didn't mean the whole visit was. He thought his dad was going to need a lot more support, but on getting there he realized his dad was in pretty good spirits and pretty level-headed, and that he wasn't going to need to be dad's rock for the whole visit. Then when his siblings started to arrive with their families, he realized he fucked up, but was embarrassed to admit it since he had turned down my offer to come along no less than 5 times and didn't want to admit he fucked up. The family noticed my absence and asked him what happened. He said he insisted I stay home and that I wanted to come along to be available to him and the family, and I guess they smacked him upside the head and told him to get his wife on the phone and that I needed to be there too, and he was being a dick. As I'd suspected, he could only think about making sure his dad was okay. Someone asked if my husband has ADD, and yes, he is diagnosed and medicated for it. He added that growing up, his dad was prone to huge tantrums when he was upset and would often scream at people and throw things, which I have witnessed. And with emotions being high this weekend, he was hesitant anyway to subject me to that. And I told him I had seen it before and I am obviously more than capable of giving people some leeway when they're hurting. And that if it was an issue, I had no problem removing myself or the both of us from the situation until it became safe. I asked why he felt it was okay to change plans so many times and not even clue me in, and he said that he was caught up in the chaos of the sudden gathering and didn't feel he had the spine to tell anyone to wait to make further plans until he could talk to me, as they'd already given him shit for my not being there in the first place. He figured an ask for forgiveness, not permission strategy was the best one. I mentioned that I had posted about this on Reddit, and that it received a lot of responses, and before he hears about it from a disembodied voice reading it over a video of a Minecraft backdrop, I wanted to show him everything first. He was upset that I had shared this vulnerable time but was understanding that he put me in a hard situation, and that at the end of the day, I needed support and advice and I was asking because I cared about him, not because I wanted him laid out. We agreed that regardless of his motivations at the time, there was some serious concern with how blasé he was about leaving me behind, and how ready he was to say I wasn't close enough to come. We are going to be seeking counseling, both for this and for working through some of his own familial trauma and overall grief counseling, as this is his first close death.